And joining me now is Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin from the 8th Congressional District. It's really good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me how the week has been for you up here. A little bit different.
Yeah, well, it's definitely different because this is the first time I've been in the conference, right? So last year I was a candidate.
Yes.
A year ago, there were lots of people who said, you're a nice person, but I don't think you can win your seat.
Yeah.
I was too cheap to actually stay on the island, so we were commuting. I was too cheap to buy a ticket. And so we were meeting people, kind of in the ice cream parlor.
Right.
And this year, it's nice to come in, and actually I think it's a great event. It's very efficient to get a lot of work done.
Yeah, and to talk about a lot of the similar things, I think when we see the entire Michigan congressional delegation standing out there and talking about shared issues and saying, look, you might have heard all the things about Washington, about how no one can work together, but there are common goals that you guys have.
Yeah, I mean, I think the belief is that Democrats and Republicans aren't working on things. The truth is we are on a regular basis. They're just not the headline grabbers, right? It's not going to make the front page of the New York Times. But what we can do is hit singles, right? We may not be hitting the home runs, but we can hit singles, and that's our job. So we try to bring those up and make sure people know about them, but it does go on. And actually, I've had a really, really positive introduction to our wonderful Michigan delegation on both sides of the aisle.
Let me ask you, what are people talking to you most about up here? Because again, I mean, you're able to interface with a lot of people who have maybe different agendas or different things on their minds, but what are they mostly asking you about?
So I think everyone has their niche issue, but the fundamental question is, can we get anything done, right? Whether someone cares about environmental issues and water issues, or they care about job training, veterans issues, they're asking, like, are we at an impasse? And we aren't. We are still passing bills every single week through the House on a bipartisan basis. What we're not having is the Senate pick them up and voting on them. And I think people just want a spark of hope that there's still something possible with, like, helping people's pocketbooks or their kids. And, that's the right question. I think they see Washington obsessed with kind of the back and forth between Democrats and Republicans. And they're asking me, is there something actually getting done? And can there be?
Yeah, because it feels like there's a bit of a disconnect about maybe things that we care about in Michigan and then the atmosphere that you're operating in Washington right now as a freshman congresswoman, getting up to speed on what the job is and what you actually can accomplish. Do you feel that you are at this point where you're like, all right, now I've got a path. Now I know I'm settling into what I need to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly kind of like a startup. When you have a new office and they give it to you, and you have a budget, and you got to hire people, and you got to get your bearings. You got to figure out how to, like, navigate the underground tunnels to get where you're going. So there's always a startup phase. I do feel like we've passed that phase. Frankly, I also had to figure out who are the workhorses and who are the show ponies. Right? Who are the people that I'm going to partner with to actually, on a bipartisan basis, get something through? And who are the folks who are there?
A lot of posturing?
A lot of posturing. I mean,
was that surprising to you?
Well, I ran for Congress because I knew it wasn't working well, so I shouldn't be shocked when it's not working well. But I will say I'm coming from the Pentagon and from the CIA. And if I'm hosting a meeting at the Pentagon and there's one person who's saying, well, I'm good at this and I should lead on that and I, that would literally have been grounds for me to say, you know what? If it's about you and not the mission, you can get up out of here. In Congress, that's every meeting. There's always someone who's I. And that has been a cultural education for me. I've had to learn to adjust, to not want to kick them out of the room, but also not fall victim to that. That's not how I am. That's not how our state is. So unsurprisingly, I spent a lot of time with Midwesterners on both sides of the aisle. One of my closest colleagues, besides the Michigan delegation, is a Republican from Ohio who just got elected, a new freshman as well. And the Midwesterners are still the place where they're willing to put, the person over the party, the mission over everything else. And that's important.
We were talking a little bit about the media, national media versus media here in Michigan, and the different things that we concentrate on. Obviously, you are functioning on that 24-hour news cycle where it feels like you being asked to react every time the president tweets something or says something? And does that impede sometimes what you're focused on and what you're doing? You're like, all right, now we have to react again.
Yeah, I think there's a real focus by the national media on sort of everything that the president's doing, every tweet, every comment, and then also everything that's happening on the far left, right? So it is frustrating. It's a never-ending cycle. I can be somewhere at 9 p.m. and suddenly a journalist is saying, well, did you see what just happened, what just tweeted out of the White House? Whereas in Michigan, we're not in that kind of constant back and forth, which I think is healthy. I do think that it's been hard because, I've had days where I've got a bipartisan bill. Myself and a Republican colleague are coming out with a big bill, let's say, to stop, PFAS, or to make sure that the EPA tests for PFAS, right? And that same day, someone will have some inflammatory comments or say something super controversial, and the media will swing over to those comments, and you're there trying to talk about a positive thing, and it's hard to break through. And that can be frustrating, sure.
It's got to be a little difficult. Much has been made about the number of women in Congress this year. And the fact that it's a very powerful example to have women in front of the room.
Yeah.
Do you feel that, should we stop talking about that? Is something still to be celebrated, or something still to say, I can do it now? Next election, where's the next generation of leaders and women who are coming forward?
So there's been a ton of focus on it, which is fantastic. And it's the largest class. Our freshman class is the largest class of women to ever come in. We're also younger by 15 years than the rest of Congress. So we have a lot of school-age children that come with all of these new members, which is fantastic, helps guide a lot of our thinking. We're still 22% of Congress. So while it feels like, this overwhelming number, we're still less than a quarter of the actual body. So we can stop working on it when we're 50-50, when we're commensurate with our population. The nice thing is showcasing all these women, I think, really inspires younger women to think, wow, running for office is something I might do. I think there's a lot of women out there who would say, gosh, it's such a toxic environment. Why would I ever, do that to myself and to my family? And then they see other women doing it, succeeding, enjoying it. And I think that sends the right signal.
Well, and maybe bringing also a lot of issues to the forefront about economic stability for women in the workforce, looking at equal pay, better child care for women to be able to work.
Yeah.
And so seeing maybe some of those issues come forward. I want to talk a little bit about PFAS since we are in Michigan right now. Talk to me what you have been doing with EPA standards and what you'd like to see happen.
So I think one of the most positive stories of this Congress is something called the Bipartisan PFAS Task Force. Representative Dan Kildee here, from the Flint area, is one of the co-hosts or co-chairs, along with a Republican counterpart from Pennsylvania. And through that task force, we have done, at this point, it must be close to dozens of bills just since January related to PFAS. To me, making sure that Michigan is banging the drum, since we are the place that has found the largest number of sites. We're the ones who are probably going to do the research and development on finding a way to clean up PFAS. And, I've literally had conversations with my Wisconsin counterparts in the Congress, and they say, what's PFAS? And I said, you've got PFAS, you just don't know.
Right.
So unfortunately, Michigan is sort of leading the way on this issue. We got to get the EPA to set a clear standard. We've got to test for PFAS, and then we need to have money to pay for the cleanup. So those are the things that we've generally been working on. And it's for me, in Michigan, I'm a hard security person, right? I'm a national security person, but you're more likely to hand your child a glass of water in Michigan that's going to give him or her an early childhood cancer or a learning disability than you are to be the victim of a terrorist attack. So I'm a big believer of just talking about environmental security the way we talk about homeland security, being muscular about it. It is about the safety of our kids and the continuation of our way of life. And that's what homeland security is, right? So in Michigan, I think we really are breaking ground on just thinking about the environment in a very bipartisan, muscular way.
All right. Well, Elissa Slotkin, it was really great to have you
Likewise.
here. Thanks so much for joining us, and we cannot wait to see how things continue down the road for you. So come back and see us, okay?
Thank you for having me.
All right, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.